Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Achates Live this afternoon, Thursday, the 14th of October. Before we get into any of the business of the day this afternoon, I have one very important announcement to make. Some of you might realise that our founder and director, Caroline, is not with us today, as she is so often on these live streams, and that is because today is her birthday. So I would like you all to join me, please, in wishing Caroline a very happy birthday. And we really hope she's having an amazing time. I know she's off in the Lake District this afternoon with her partner. So Caroline, I hope you're having a wonderful day and lots of love from all of us at Achates and everyone on the live stream. So with that lovely piece of news done, we are into the business of today. So this afternoon's session is on international fundraising. And as ever, this session is brought to you by Achates. We are a strategy, fundraising and recruitment company. And welcome to everybody on this afternoon's session. I will introduce our lovely panelists shortly. Today, we are hosted by our head of recruitment, Matthew Swan, who some of you will have seen on last month's live stream. So, as many of you know, Achates is a creative consultancy with a holistic approach to recruitment, fundraising, and strategy development. We take our name from Greek and Roman mythology. So Achates was the close friend and loyal advisor to Aeneas. And that's how we like to think about ourselves and how we like to position ourselves in the sector, as a friend and advisor to the cultural sector. As many of you will know, we set up Achates Live to support the sector, bringing fundraisers together to discuss key topics, and also to enable you to help and support each other and to create a network of organisations. We always say we don't have all the answers, but what we do have is an overview of the cultural sector, which we really like to use in a supportive way. Our live stream started as a way for us to support the sector during the first lockdown, and it's continued online since then, driven by topics that you, our viewers, have requested. As I said earlier, today's session is on international fundraising, and we're looking at how to raise funds through developing long-term relationships with international funding partners. So with us on our panel today, I'm going to go in alphabetical order. You can wave to my cleaning lady in the background there. She's just getting herself changed and ready to go. So in alphabetical order, we have Artem Szabo. So if Artem, you could give us a little wave there.
Hi everyone, lovely to be here.
Great, thank you so much, Artem. We'll hear more from him later. And we also have Cristina Fuentes La Roche. Cristina.
Hello.
Hello, lovely to have you both with us today. So Artem is the Chief Executive and co-founder of Manchester Collective, who were founded in 2016. They're known for their experimental programming and daring collaborations. Their work's expanded at breakneck speed since their formation in 2016, and they now play in concert halls, warehouses, factory spaces across Europe and the UK, performing a combination of cutting-edge contemporary music, classical masterpieces, and staged work to a hungry new audience. Great. So prior to his work with the collective, Artem enjoyed a busy and varied career as an orchestral cellist. He worked as guest principal with many of the finest orchestras in the UK, including Welsh National Opera, BBC Philharmonic Orchestra, Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and Orchestra of Opera North. Cristina Fuentes La Roche is director of Hay Festival International, an annual celebration of literature that takes place in numerous places around the world. In 2019, at the opening of Peru's Hay Festival Arequipa, she was made an officer of the Order of the British Empire. Cristina was recognised for her work in developing educational and cultural programming and services in Latin American markets. Appointed in 2005, she's overseen more than 100 events on 5 continents as the Hay Festival has steadily expanded its network of international auditions. So we are really delighted to have both Artem and Cristina with us this afternoon. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Matthew to bring you the rest of the session.
Thank you very much, Carrie-Anne. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adam and Cristina. As we all know, UK culture is a major international export. We're known worldwide for the quality of literary festivals, our theatre and dance productions, and our orchestras. In the wider cultural industries, our exports in the field of film, television, and gaming are major drivers of the economy. The UK's music industry is one of only 3 net exporters worldwide, along with the US and Sweden. But is it possible to fundraise internationally for work both here and in the UK and elsewhere? Traditionally, the received wisdom has been that alongside the British Council, there are internationally agents and funders who will support initiatives on a national basis. But to develop more regular support, a regular presence is required through committed presence and touring. Organisations like Tate Galleries, who have made such long-term investments, have seen great returns as a result. But this model has been difficult for smaller organisations, even those who are mid-scale, to emulate. Achates' own director, Caroline McCormick, secured a pledge of 30 million towards the Darwin Centre when she was Director of Development at the Natural History Museum from the Qatari government, a pledge that she and the museum ultimately had to walk away from due to ethical issues related to the national collection. But our thinking on these issues has changed and evolved over the last 18 months. As we explored in the session on long-distance fundraising last year, the pandemic has also seen organisations of all scales gain audiences in locations that they would not have considered before. Arts Council England's strategic thinking in this area is now closely linked to export, with the new National Delivery Plan saying that over the next 3 years, arts and culture will look for additional opportunities to develop and showcase this country's creative and cultural talent on the international stage. The UK government will negotiate a series of bilateral collaborations, initially with Denmark, France, and Germany, enabling those working in our cultural sector to develop partnerships with their international peers. And national lottery project grant funds will be opened up for more international collaborations. And one of the sessions in the Achates Philanthropy Foundation's forthcoming symposium in November from the 15th to the 19th will explore how social and climate justice agendas can work together when the travel involved in international touring is rightly being scrutinised, especially at a time when so many creatives in the global south depend economically on the ability to present work in the global north. Today, we are focusing on the issue of international fundraising. Can it be done? What does it look like? And is it worthwhile? As Karian said, we have 2 brilliant panelists who are going to share their insights in this area. And I'm going to hand straight over to them, starting with Adam.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you, Matthew. Really lovely to be here. So I thought it might be helpful to give a bit of an overview of the work of Manchester Collective internationally, and then I think we'll be really pleased to take some questions from the audience. So please do be popping them into the chat, even as Christina and I are kind of speaking. That'd be great. Yeah, as Matthew mentioned, Manchester Collective is a very young company. We were founded in 2016 and we only played our first concert in 2017. Our work is really about reimagining what a classical music experience can look like in 2021. And that really extends from the programming and the projects that we present through to the players that we have on stage, through to the audiences that come to see our shows and the venues that we present at. We're not an NPO, so we're project funded at this point, and then we work with trusts and foundations and individuals to kind of pull together core funding alongside our own income, of course. And I guess the flexibility of the ensemble has been a really important part of the reasons for growth and the reasons for any success that we've enjoyed over the last couple of years. We play, certainly pre-COVID, we did a lot of work in Europe, and now that is beginning to open up again. Of course, we've had quite a slow 2 years when it comes to international touring work. And I guess it's no surprise to anyone to hear that in, our sort of corner of the classical world, it's been a really challenging kind of fundraising environment. Not just because of COVID, but because of Brexit. A lot of our colleagues relied quite heavily on Creative Europe funding, for large collaborative projects. And those pots are obviously now much more difficult to access. And I guess that's not the only source either that it feels like we've sort of cut ourselves off from as a nation. And then you add to that the pressures that Matthew alluded to, where to my mind, it's still quite an uneasy situation of squaring the Arts Council's delivery plans with the rhetoric around sustainability and touring, I don't think anyone really knows how to reconcile these issues that are quite often, in opposition to each other. I guess for us, as a small sort of medium-sized organization, there's also a really crucial capacity element to this conversation that we can't ignore. We, until very recently, had one full-time fundraiser, our development director, and then half of my job as chief exec is sort of chasing money around the place. We've just hired a second development manager, but I guess that puts some pretty harsh restrictions on the amount of time that we can really be looking at long distance fundraising when the sort of financial situation in the UK is so pressured. I guess our work and the model for us in terms of the international work that we've done has really been much more about finding lucrative opportunities for projects and commissions and work, not just in Europe, but in the States as well. I mean, excuse me, one example of a project that I suppose is kind of obliquely ended up as a fundraising kind of initiative was that we were asked to be involved in a documentary for ORF3, which is the Austrian Cultural Channel. We flew the band over to Vienna and shot for a week, and this documentary, which is sort of a music film, will be broadcast in many of the kind of German-speaking territories. And even the project is in post-production at the moment, but even being involved in that to this point has opened up all sorts of opportunities to develop kind of relationships and kind of funding agreements and doorways to potentially more lucrative work in Austria as well. So it's not that this project was specifically devised or thought about for us as a kind of development side of our work, but it's certainly opened up lots of interesting doors. Festival touring continues to be quite profitable to us, although that's mainly a reflection of the fact that generally in the UK, concert fees for classical music are pretty dire when you compare them with European fees. And so even with the various withholding taxes that we're now currently sort of subject to, again, because of Brexit, it's still a really viable kind of profit generating exercise for us to be producing longer tours into Europe. And next year in October, for the first time, we have 3 weeks booked in the States for a kind of larger project. I guess the European touring and the work in the States as well, where it has sort of a philanthropic bent, it's been about, I guess, leveraging those performance opportunities to develop relationships with individual donors and individual funders. And, a lot of our work is about returning to the same cities and the same venues kind of year on year, or often, multiple times through a season. And so again, as we begin to build those relationships, it sort of opens up all sorts of opportunities in terms of individuals that might help to support our work. I guess the kind of formal trust and foundation bit for us, the British Council's International Collaboration Grant at the moment is a really great example of something that is available and it is still out there. But of course, often, British Council pots are tied to specific territories, and it's quite hard to kind of retrofit, work to the fund. So it tends to be a case of either you're lucky and you happen to be planning a Tanzanian project, or you're not. And yeah, I think even with these collaborations, they do come off, the primary benefits for us tend to be soft and tend to come in the form of relationship building and creating partnerships with organizations. So hopefully that's a bit of an overview as to where we're at with this kind of work. I'm going to yield the balance of my time and hand over to Christina, and hopefully we'll take some questions.
Thanks, Adam. And Christina, over to you.
Okay, hello. I would like to congratulate Caroline for her birthday. And, my name is Christina. I'm International Director of the Hay Festival. As you may know, the Hay Festival is a festival of ideas, of literature, that started in Hay-on-Wye, in this small literary village in Wales 34 years ago. And Hay, from the very beginning, has been a model of excellence, how to mix writers, thinkers, musicians, comedians, and create like a proper festival of ideas. And many people came to us from other cities around the world and organizers to try to do like their own Hay in their countries. And for many years, we helped them with know-how, how to put it together. And we have got like sisters and brothers festivals, like the festival in Berlin, or the festival in Italy, Mantova, or the festival in Brazil, Parachi. But there was a moment when we decided, instead of only helping, why don't we create them ourselves? I mean, we go there, we get some funding together, and that's when I joined the Hay Festival team in 2004, trying to see opportunities. Hay has become a great brand that we can take out there, and basically. What we do, we started with Colombia, Cartagena de Indias, was a suggestion by the Mexican writer Carlos Fuentes, saying, you know, the Hispanic language and culture is an interesting place to be. Cartagena, one of the most interesting, beautiful cities in the Caribbean Sea, and as well a country that really needed this kind of conversations. So what we did, I went there, you know, there was a budget zero, and the idea was to fundraise using the brand, using our know-how, money from the public and private sector to put a first festival together. You know, the first times we went a lot of times there, you know, and we managed to get some public funding, some private funding, using these first years like another legal entity, like a theater in Cartagena in this case. Getting some public money to create the festival, and the private funders, they were able either to pay us directly in the UK or suppliers directly. So that's how we started. Eventually, we create, wherever we go, a legal entity, because many of the private sponsors, they want to get donation certificate. We are not for profit, and every entity we create is not for profit. So, you know, along the years, I've got now a little team of an international team. And what we do, it could look a little bit like a franchise, although it's not a franchise. Everything we do is, you know, with the same mission-led as we do Hay Wells, with the same enthusiasm, with the same know-how, obviously creating local teams wherever we go. So, you know, it's a small teams, you know, in each country. We have got now festivals, ongoing year after year festivals in Colombia, in Peru, in Mexico, in Spain. We have had many festivals in other places that had a shorter life or evolved into something else, into an independent festival. And we do a lot of one-off projects. It's basically maximizing our know-how, our brand. And it's interesting because we have got to know how to fundraise. As I mentioned, we try to strive this mixed economy that makes us quite independent. We don't belong to anyone. We have got a bit of public funding, private funding, and you know, we work as well with international organizations like British Council or all the country organizations that promotes their own culture abroad, like Goethe Institute, the French Institute, or the Acción Cultural Española from Spain. But those will cover just a little bit of a few writers to take them around. We have developed international partnerships with BBC, for example. They're interested in the Hispanic world, BBC World, for example. And in Kew Gardens, we work with them. We do an event in each festival. So, you know, in some themes, there is like one conversation we can carry around with one sponsor. But in terms of large sponsors, they tend to be more interested in the local market. And even with global companies, you may think that it will be a great advantage to get a global company to support us everywhere with the same Hay brand, wherever we go. But then they all have got local budgets and local regulations, so it's not so easy. We managed to do like an international partnership with Sura. It's a big insurance company based in Colombia, but they want to be Latin American. So they were very interested in us, for us to be in Mexico, Peru as well. So they are our regional partners. And it was one of the first kind of corporate regional partnerships we did. And it was very much led by head office, and each country put a bit of the funding. So it was a bit of a match funding, and I think is great. And I don't know, in this last year with all the lockdown, the COVID, we have to turn all our festivals digital. And I think that was very interesting in terms of new partnerships we can do with brands, because, for example, this specific example I was giving you, this insurance company, they want to be seen as the regional insurance company of Latin America. through our online work, they were even more visible with that kind of goal linked to cultural ideas. So, I could see a lot of new benefits for, having an international audience. So, I've got a lot of experience going to a place, and more than creating international funding for all the hay, local funding using our model of benefits, or how we work with the private sector in different places, and the public sector as well. So it's quite depending the country, the tapestry of funding is different. For example, in Mexico, there is a lot of public funding, so our funding kind of strategy is, I will say, 80% public money and 20 only private. In Colombia is quite even, it's a mix of private funding, corporate money, or public money from tourism and culture, individual giving, ticket sales. The ratio change from country to country. In the UK, for example, in Wales, the model is very much ticket sales as well. It's a big percentage of the budget. That's not the case in developing countries, for example. So it's quite interesting to share the know-how and learnings from one place to the other, understanding as well each country has got its own different not only rules, but ways of fundraising and working with partners. Although, having said that, there is a lot of that can be shared. And as well, I think another interesting question about funding and international fundraising is which sponsors will you accept in one country and not in the other. In countries like the UK, maybe certain brands you wouldn't want them to be associated to your cultural activity. But for example, in places like Peru, that 4% of the GDP is produced by mining companies. Wouldn't you take some of the mining money? I think this kind of ethics and thresholds changes depending the place you are in. But that's something we can talk if you're interested about afterwards. So I've got a lot of experience in this kind of areas. So very happy, as Adam said, to answer any questions at any point. Thank you.
Thank you both, Adam and Christina. I'm going to kick off with a few questions. Do keep the questions coming through on chat on the YouTube stream as well. I'm aware from our own chat function on Zoom that Adam and Christina have got questions for each other as well. So we're sure to have a lively discussion. I'm going to kick things off by asking Christina first, and also Adam as well. Where do you see the next area globally to engage with for international work and its associated financial support? In your introductions, you've mentioned territories as various as the US, Middle East, Europe, South America. What about China or other emerging markets? And what are the implications of looking to those newer territories? Christina, I'll kick off with you and then hand over to Adam. Okay.
I mean, for us as a festival of literature and ideas and freedom of expression and human rights, I don't know, it's an interesting question and complicated. Where do we operate? I don't know, we have had, for example, in Mexico, sometimes a lot of noise about how do you get money from a corrupted local government or this company. And it's very hard because, if you want completely clean money, I don't know where will you go. Even, and as well, I think our red line is obviously needs to be legal money, and there has to be obviously due diligence. But it's an interesting where do you put the line? And for us, the line is a place where we can do whatever we want in the way we want. It's like authors are about to meet. There is no censorship. We have got our own criteria, because we were, for example, last year we tried to do a festival in Abu Dhabi. We did a first edition. It was quite controversial, the idea of going there for many of our supporters and people around. And we have been working in 10 years in the Arab world. We did a festival in Beirut for a few years. That was very hard to do because of funding, but very meaningful. We did a selection of the most interesting Arab writers under the age of 40. So for us, it was an interesting progression in our work in the Arab world. And the Abu Dhabi people knew who we are. We stand for freedom of expression, and we gave it a go. And the festival itself was great. 70% of the program were women. We didn't say we're going to do a festival, but we know what we want to achieve, and we go slowly. A lot of women, a lot of issues. We brought, for example, a band from Lebanon that is very well known for LGBT, activism, and we were allowed to do everything we wanted, and that was for us interesting. Then the issue got more complicated, but there are areas like that, like you were mentioning before about Qatari. China is another example. There is no freedom of expression. There is a lot of writers in exile, but Chinese people has got as well a right to create the spaces for discussion, for ideas, and what is more important? Could you operate there without public money? Is it worth it? It's a lot of questions. I don't have all the answers, and I think it needs to be analyzed case by case basis. But I think it's important to we prefer in general to engage in conversations, in discussions, than that close many doors with many obstacles. But it's a balance.
When it comes to the kind of public funding situation, Christina, in some of the territories you've mentioned, I mean, have you found in the past that festivals in one territory are kind of propping up or subsidizing festivals in another territory, or do you try and keep all of these, the franchises that you mentioned, do you try and keep them actually financially exclusive?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, the only an example of, for example, Visit Wales. I mean, the Welsh government has got some funding to promote Wales as a cultural destination abroad. So that's a very interesting money. So in each festival, we have got like a Visit Wales series, and we put a little film about Wales. And that's a very interesting way, like one country or part of a country can support others. There needs to be, I haven't found like, it's more each country wants to promote their own artists, writers, and country as a tourist destination. So there is always little money available, like British Council, like Goethe, or there is always little pockets of money, of public money promoted, but for something very small. Because for us, the French, for example, we may get 5 French writers to, let's say, Mexico, to a festival of 200 writers. So they help. It's like that kind of mixed economy I was talking about, a lot of little money from many. But in terms of corporate money, although the same as I was saying, that it may look a great opportunity to support someone like us that are in many places, we can have a great agenda of, then you find out that each country has got their own little pocket of money, even if it's a big company, internally they have got autonomy, and it's hard to do it. But I think there is a lot of scope there of collaboration, and as well as something we still need to explore is trust and foundations in a deeper way. But I know usually trust and foundations, they don't like what festivals, they like campaigns, but we can, for example, talk about migration, climate change in all the festivals tied up with a trust, a foundation. We're starting to work with the Open Society now in Latin America. So I'm sure there is a lot of scope of this kind of global collaborations, but it will be always a percentage of each country funding strategy. I think we still work a lot with local funding in terms of private and public money. Another example is, for example, we do a festival in Segovia in Spain, and until very recently we operated the festival fully from our UK foundation until Brexit happened, because until before Brexit we could even get public money from Spain to the UK to be operated in Spain. It was like a big, and even private money. You could operate a festival from, with a legal entity in the UK, in Spain, for example. Not anymore now. Now we have to create our own foundation there. So, there is a lot of issues about as well, and as well for corporate money, what they want is a donation certificate for tax purposes, and that needs to be locally done. It needs to be a local entity. So yeah, but there is a scope about.
I just wanted to turn to some of those logistical issues that you referred to, Christina, for both. Well, I'll go to Adam first, if I may. And we all know that in a post-pandemic world and post-Brexit, there are many more logistical and administrational challenges put up in front of us, but that traditionally it's been the very big orchestras, the very big theatre companies and the very big art galleries, for example, that have done a lot of touring and a lot of the international fundraising associated with that. With the rise of digital technologies over the last 18 months and both of your relative sizes from a kind of logistical perspective, are there advantages in that of being nimble that are opening up that maybe aren't opening up to some larger, more sort of oil tanker sized cultural organizations? Adam, if I can return to you on that first.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd be really interested to hear, how the kind of the ticketed model for digital, kind of Hay festivals has really looked. I mean, I've certainly passed through the time of the pandemic where I had any interest in engaging with any digital cultural activity. I just can't do it anymore, and I think we're finding that quite broadly with our audiences is that, they engage in a really deep way with content that is out there and they listen to records, but the number of people who are willing to pay, 20 quid to sit down and watch 90 minutes of theatre, in their office at home after a day of Zoom calls is sort of really dwindling. I mean, I think this has been a real soft return for us as well. And, where we've had content that has kind of, gone viral, it's then that has translated into kind of real world opportunities, whether or not that's, concert bookings or kind of building kind of more brand awareness or awareness of a particular project. And so I think that's the way that we've really been able to capitalize on that kind of work. And I mean, really, I don't think functionally that's doing a particularly different thing to what like radio play, has been doing for the last 80 years. Actually, it's just about reaching, kind of a really broad range of audiences in quite a frictionless way. But I don't know that anyone is really kind of getting rich off that element of their work. I think if anything, it's probably costing most organizations more money than they're making from it.
Christina, do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, what we managed to do during the pandemic is we managed to keep, what we are is quite light in terms of fixed cost. We don't have a building. I mean, hey, yes, but not everywhere else. We're a small team that grows a lot during the festival. So, 70% of our team is outsourced. Yeah, that comes into place 2 months before each festival. So, we travel quite light. And we managed to renegotiate all the contracts with sponsor in an online format. We managed to get money from, for example, from small partners like embassies. For example, before embassies used to pay for travel and accommodation, we managed to get them to pay for a percentage of the digital platform, a percentage of the fee we pay to the author, and a percentage of PR, extra social media, and they were happy to do it. Sponsors that before used to pay for doing obviously an offline festival, they were happy to give a little bit less for online. So, in a way, we managed to survive. And I think it's very interesting, as we have got quite a strong offline reputation, especially in developing countries, people wanted to come to Hay. It was the first time they could come. So I think maybe in Europe, we're all fed up with digital, but in places like Colombia, in January, we did our digital festival and we got 1 million people watching the festival. And that's a sum of people that register live. It was free. Register live too, but you need to register live to see it, cross-posting with partners, and then reproductions of those videos that we left for 2 weeks. So it's really 1 million people that click and saw the video. So that's astonishing. And we saw people obviously from all the region, from the places we operate, but a lot from little villages in Colombia that for the first time, they felt invited to watch the festival. And maybe music, theater are not ideal for these kind of things, but the art of a conversation is quite okay. Obviously, we will never replace a festival, but it's the art form that, in my viewpoint, that better adapts to this. And it's quite, it was quite amazing to see the writers, we were all, like we are now, we are all separate in our houses, offices, but together. And this is not, and as well the idea that this is not an option B, it's not like we're in a theater and the audience is watching us streaming from a theater. This is the only thing that exists this moment. And there was something quite new about that, at least in the literary and idea as well. So it's interesting. Another quick thing, but for free. Our model, digital model in the developing countries is for free, but funded. And that worked for us. I don't know if it is ongoing, and I don't think it is. I think we need the physicality and the hybrid model. But it was now in Wales, we are doing the winter weekend in November, from the 28th of November to the 4th and the 8th. And basically all the festival is happening face-to-face. but we're streaming it and we are charging, it's an experiment. We are charging £25 pass for the streaming of the 4 days. And we launched the program 2 weeks ago, and we already have got 200 people, or even more now, that was last week, of people that bought the digital pass. £25, the digital events, and it's interesting that it was completely an experiment to see whether people will pay to listen to events streamed from the physicality into their computers, and 200 people in a week. That's quite a lot. I mean, let's see. We're still exploring that model and learning as we do it.
Are you finding, Christina, that in the sort of developing territories where you're, the kind of free festival that you mentioned, are sponsors there having conversations about like the nature of the digital engagement, for sort of subsequent festivals? Like, is that a big thing for them? Because
the number, especially private, the reach they get is sometimes, if in a physical event they can get the branding to be seen by 50,000 people. Online, much more, and everything can be measured. And so I think I have found not everything works like that. For example, in Querétaro, the mayor of the city we are in, he told us, you don't tell me about the international audience. I care about my voters that are here. So, of course, it depends the nature of the sponsors, but I think they're quite happy for the hybrid model. Because, us as a festival, we tick many boxes. We're about social engagement with communities, promoting books, reading and writing. We are about creating, for the corporate, sometimes they find like a corporate entertainment in the Hay, like there is parties with the writers and they like that part. There is as well another part about people, like engagement with an interesting community of readers. And and as well, I think sponsors are all very excited about the hybrid model, that they can be physically, they can entertain, bring in the clients, they can help the communities, whatever, but as well reach a wider audience online. And it needs, and especially where culture is considered even more elitist than here in these countries, that is very important, the idea of being accessible and reaching far beyond the convinced audience or the paying possible audience, and go to it becomes even more important and interesting in the developing world. Mm-hmm.
I think that's an interesting point, Christina, about that sense of place that bringing a festival can create, and the way that can be leveraged for fundraising, whether that's from government sources or private sources. Adam, it's a slightly different situation with the performing arts, of course, in that you tend to be sort of, one night here, next night somewhere else. It's Tuesday, therefore we must be in Strasbourg or something like that. How can you help your local partners create that sense of space, and what implications, positive or otherwise, might that have for you in terms of income generation?
I mean, I think it's really linked to the sort of sustainability discussion, and the shape of international musical touring is changing very quickly. I think what we're seeing a lot more of rather than flying out to a location for one gig where there's, a really kind of slim profit margin, and maybe it's not worth the kind of sustainability backlash that comes with flying 80 musicians out to Shanghai for 2 days. A lot more kind of dot-to-dot touring where, we're sort of engaging more deeply with one particular territory. You sort of back to bus tours, which in a way is kind of a step back from the sort of more glamorous high-flying orchestral world of the 90s and the 2000s. But I just don't think that, funders really want to see that either now. It's sort of much more about engaging in a deeper way with one particular territory.
Sorry, on a similar note, are you finding that international funders or even national funders that are helping you to do international work are pushing hard on that climate agenda? We've obviously spoken about Arts Council England, but is the pressure coming from, for example, individual funders as well?
Yeah, I think it's part of every conversation that we're having now. There's no, it's no longer sufficient for us to say that this is a great opportunity, it's going to bring in some money and we're going to play to this many people. There has to be a greater case that is kind of built around, the kind of carbon cost of that work, I think.
Thank you. I'm going to take my opportunity to say thank you very much to Adam and to Christina for joining us. And I'm going to hand back to Carrie-Anne with some questions from YouTube viewers.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Matthew. It's been a really interesting conversation, actually. I've been making some notes as we've been going along. I think particularly reflecting, it's that duality, isn't it? The pressures that and the changes that COVID's brought about, and the pressures and changes that Brexit's brought about, particularly if you're looking at that European touring model. It kind of ties into that, really. This is a question for Christina specifically, but actually there might be some way that we could reflect on that with Adam as well. This is coming in from our lovely head of trusts, Rose Goddard. She has asked, particularly of Christina, do your smaller international teams have their own fundraising relationships locally, or do you take a more centralized approach?
That's a very good question. When we start to go to a country, the first person we look for is a development person there, our development director in each country, and we find that person, that team, and then we help them a lot. We show him or her how we do it. We do it in a way that is coherent in the way we operate, and eventually the relations are shared. We know the sponsors there, but the day-to-day work is done locally by a person locally in each country, and but all the information is centralized. Even if we operate through different legal entities and different contracts between the legal entities, we operate as a team. It's like, I direct the festival as such. I know what's going on in the developing department there. My development director, for example, in Colombia, goes. I used to travel a lot before lockdown. Once a month I was in Colombia, Peru. Now with these kind of Zoom meetings, I'm even more in touch with my sponsors. So in the future, they may change. Now in the future, we have learned to delegate more as well. So I guess the contacts needs to be local, but amplified by an international part of the team as well. So all our sponsors, they know we are one. There is a local person they talk to about the fundraising, but there is an international team, and they like this idea of creating very interesting and very rooted local conversations, local contacts, but as well with an international kind of dialogue and input, and not just bringing international speakers to the festivals, but as well new themes, refreshing, new ways of looking at some problems, making panels, mixing humanists with economists and anthropologists. I don't know, the way we do things as well, and that's refreshing in these countries. And we learn a lot as well. We learn a lot from Colombia. We create bridges of both ways bridges. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. And you kind of preempted my supplementary question there as well, Christina. I was going to ask about how COVID and actually us generally all working more digitally and online than we have previously has affected your working practices as much as anything else. But you actually really answered that already. It's an interesting one.
In a way, as a team, we have always been like that. We are very organized. We got very good software, centralized information. We have weekly meetings by Skype. We used to have them. What has been interesting in COVID is like, before you could always get middle managers in the phone, even sometimes in Skype, but you will never get a minister of culture. You will never get the top decision maker. It was hard. You need to go to their offices, wait in their waiting area, and go to see him or her. And that has changed. I have had great conversations that were unthinkable before. That kind of level of, especially ministers of cultures, decision makers, that were happy to engage into this new format. And that has been great, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, that sounds really fascinating. That must be so interesting, talking to a Minister of Culture on Zoom. Quite odd. It's quite an intimate way of communicating, I always think, on Zoom. You're looking into someone's home often. It's very interesting. So Adam, your model is really different to the way that Hay Festival operates and the way that Christina works. But have you managed to develop locally based fundraising relationships internationally? How does that work for you?
Yeah, we have done, and the area where that becomes really important for us are where there are costs that we only need to, cover once, which is generally when it comes to commissioning. Presenting a major new piece of work, working with a composer, or a filmmaker or a director, and then co-commissioning work with other arts organizations, in partnership. And so it's increasingly a way that is, really interesting for us to be working. I mean, there's, real benefit to the collaboration with, a Scandinavian chamber orchestra or kind of an American concert promoter. And so there's, again, those kind of soft returns of our team learning from their team and vice versa. But then also the fact that if you can split the cost of a commission, then, there's kind of more new work in the world, I guess. And then it really does become possible for, a Norwegian organization to fundraise directly from, the kind of Norwegian Arts Council or from kind of local philanthropists or trusts and foundations, for us to do the same over here. And I mean, similarly to what Christina was saying, I think there's real kind of interest and appetite for the international nature of that sort of collaboration and dialogue and partnership, even if the activity is really local. There's real appeal to the idea that, this piece is also being presented in Oslo or whatever the case might be.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, Adam, I'm just going to pick up on something you mentioned earlier, and actually it ties into what you were just saying here as well. You talked about the kind of the fee structures for work in Europe being much, much stronger than they are in the UK. And that really chimes with something I was talking to a client of mine about a couple of weeks ago, actually. Do you think that, and this is slightly tangential to this conversation, but we have a little bit of time, so I'm going to ask it. Do you feel that Brexit and alongside kind of travel restrictions are going to have a kind of longer term effect on how you're able to operate within Europe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not even about our work. I mean, like, very empirically, it's had a massive effect on how all of our colleagues are operating in Europe as well. I mean, the fee issue kind of predates Brexit and COVID, of course, and it's just to do with a much higher degree of kind of government support for, kind of the arts in kind of many European countries. And it's not so much that we feel a difference when it comes to working with top promoters in the UK. It's that actually then there's another 40 small German towns that will also pay really great concert fees for shows. And so, for us, the issue doesn't so much tend to be that, that we can't, sort of do a big show in London. It's just that when in the UK we're playing in Birkenhead or Hull or Newcastle or, Liverpool, like we're absolutely hemorrhaging cash on those gigs. And the only way we can prop them up is by subsidizing them with other own income. Whereas, we did kind of a Swiss tour a couple of years ago where we went to some, kind of really gorgeous bijou towns. And, it was a profit generating tour because there's just kind of more money to play with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that completely chimes with what my colleague was saying a couple of weeks ago. It's just a really interesting thing. Matthew, sorry, you were saying?
Sorry, no, just to dive in there, I remember a conversation I had during the sort of height of the lockdown with a UK concert hall, complaining that she had almost no chance on the flip side of getting international artists coming in, because the touring network in the UK, building on what Adam said, is so poorly supported compared to our European counterparts that, an orchestra coming into the UK would play in London, Manchester, and that would be it. And the thought of getting them to a very, very good concert hall in a small town in Essex that was nevertheless well supported was almost, it was just 9 times out of 10, it never happened. And I think there is this strange thing in the UK that we're very good at exporting, but we're not so good at exporting within our own sort of, infrastructure.
Yeah,
no, it's really, yeah, I was thinking that actually, Matthew. I think there's something, I think this is we're risking tipping off into a completely different but extremely interesting conversation about the nature and the value of art in different international locations. And I think, yeah, and it's not to say that we don't value art in the UK, because we absolutely do, but I think we value it in a slightly different way, and we place it in a different, it relates differently to wider society than I think often it does in Europe and in the rest of the world. But like I say, that's a completely different conversation. Christina, you were nodding quite vehemently there. Is there anything you have to add to that?
No, I mean, interesting, and as well all these, no, just adding, the complication of Brexit is, the visa issues, for example, as well, like, not so much in terms of fundraising, but we always work with a lot of interns from Europe here in the UK, fully paid, and now we need to find a visa for each of them. So, everything has become, more complicated, I don't know, that's, no, adding that only. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much to be said on this topic, and I think particularly around, my mind is firing in all sorts of different directions around like I said earlier, the values we put on art and culture in the UK, and the values that are placed on art and culture in different areas of the world, and actually how we treat art and artists is a really interesting conversation. But sadly,
it's linked to funding. The value is there. We all value it, but who funds it?
No, and that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. The value actually is where, who and how is willing to pay for that, essentially. Because if you are an artist, you need to earn money in order to continue being an artist. Otherwise, you have to be an artist and a waiter, or an artist and whatever that is. But yeah, I think that the expectation of an artist's life is very different in the UK than it is in France or Spain or Germany, for example, which is, it's just, that's a different conversation, but it's very interesting. So on that very interesting note, I think we are probably ready to wind up this conversation today. So it falls to me to say thank you so much to Christina and to Arden.
Thanks very much. And
obviously to our very own Matthew for leading this session so ably this afternoon. We, as you know, are Achates. We are just in the process of rebranding and dropping the philanthropy. So I'm struggling to call us Achates. I keep calling us Achates Philanthropy. So we are Achates. As many of you know, we are here for a range of services, including recruitment, fundraising, strategy development, organizational development. So if you have any needs around strategic or financial or organizational or recruitment development, then do drop us a line at info@achates.org.uk if you need any help from us. We will see you back here in November for our session on capital projects, which will be very timely because I think it's going to fall just after the expression of interest window closes for the ACE Small Capital Programme. So I know that myself and Caroline are working on a number of those with some of our partners at the moment. So yes, we will be seeing you back here again for ACE Small Capital in November. Until then, a big happy birthday once again to Caroline, and we'll see you all very soon. Thank you to our lovely panel for today, and